friends. This is another exciting business studies class, and I still remain your tutor. I believe you've been watching our videos and you've been learning one or two things from it. Today we'll be looking at the topic Office Documents Part 2. We have looked at the Part 1 of this particular topic where we learned the definition. We identified the two types of office documents, which are the sales documents and the purchase documents. We learned what the sales documents are used for, the definition. Then we also identified about 5 to 6 sales documents in which we learned their uses. So please, I want you to make sure you watch that video so that you'll be able to get a comprehensive knowledge of the topic office documents. So to continue the topic, today we'll be looking at the second type of office documents, which is the Part 2 of the topic. So by the end of today's lesson, you should be able to define purchase documents, then identify various purchase documents and explain them, explain the use of letter of inquiry, explain other letter, discuss the open and close indent, explain the use of purchase daybook, and also the use of the receipt. So these are the various office documents that we'll be looking at today. So let's start by looking at the definition of purchase documents. Purchase documents, as the second type of office documents, are those documents that are used to keep record of all purchase transactions, be it cash transactions or credit transactions. In our previous video, I took time to explain the difference between cash and credit transactions. So we can see that the purchase document is more or less like the opposite of sales documents. Sales documents are used for keeping record of sales transactions, while purchase documents are used to keep record of purchase transactions, be it cash transactions, that means transactions that involve the immediate release or the immediate exchange of cash. Or the other one, which is credit transaction, that means the one that you as the buyer, you have the intention of paying for what you have bought at a later agreed date. That means the date agreed between you and the seller of such products. Now we are going to be looking at the various types of office documents, purchase documents that we have. We have the letter of inquiry, we have other letter, we have open and closed indent, we have the purchase daybook, and the fifth document we'll be looking at is the receipt. Letter of inquiry, other letter, open and closed indent, purchase daybook, and the receipt. So we'll be taking them one after the other and explaining the use or the uses of each of them. The first document is the letter of inquiry, which we can also call inquiry letter. To inquire means to do what? To request for information or to get information about something. So a letter of inquiry is simply used by the buyer to request or get information about a particular product or a service. If, for example, I heard that a particular service provider can offer one service or the other, and I want to be sure, I want to know how authentic the information I received is, I can proceed by what? Writing a letter of inquiry. Not just believing what I heard, but I want to be sure. I want to get the direct information from the service provider. I can do that by preparing a letter of inquiry. So it is written by a buyer to a seller to request for information or to ascertain the authenticity of a particular product or service to be rendered. A letter of inquiry is not only used for sales and purchase transactions. You can also use it for job vacancies. Maybe you heard that there's a job vacancy somewhere and you want to be sure. You can send a letter of inquiry. You can use it for sourcing for fund. You can use it for getting grants from government. You can use it to maybe inquire about scholarship, projects, sales, pre-proposals, and other things. So the letter of inquiry is not only used for sales and purchases. That's the reason why we call them office documents. They are not only used for sales and purchase transactions. They are used for virtually every type of transaction carried out in the office. So this is what the letter of, you can see is drafted like a letter where you have, it's more or less like a formal letter where you have your own address and the address of the recipient. You have your salutation there, sir or ma. Then you have the content of the letter. That means the type of information that you are requesting for. You close it with your signature, your name, then you endorse. Then you have your remark at the end of it. The next type of purchase document is the order form. We can also refer to the order form as a purchase order. This document is prepared by a buyer to request for goods. Now, sorry to take you back. Let me add this to letter of inquiry. Remember, one of the sales documents we looked at is the quotation. The letter of inquiry is a letter you have sent. So the quotation is a reply gotten based on the letter of inquiry. I'm saying this because this question is usually asked in exams, that an answer to a letter of inquiry is dash. So an answer to a letter of inquiry is the quotation. The first part of this topic, we learned the quotation as a sales document. The buyer prepares the letter of inquiry and sends it to the seller. Then the seller returns or gives an answer with a quotation. So take note of that. So let's go back to the order form. So an order form can also be referred to as a purchase order. It's like a form that is filled to request or to order for goods. Now, you've sent your letter of inquiry. You have been given a quotation as an answer, and you are satisfied with the quotation given to you. The next thing you can do as a buyer is now to do what? Is to request for the goods or to request for the service. And to request for these goods, you need the order form. The order form is used to request for goods. It's used to place order. So it's a document that confirms the details of the purchase of goods and services from one party to another. So on the order form, you write the date, you put your name, your address, then you give a list of the items that you want the supplier to do what? To give to you. The quantity you need, then the unit price also. Remember, on the quotation, you have the price for each item. So you can have the unit price and also have your own total expected price. You send it to the buyer. Then you can also put the address of delivery. That means the address where you want the seller to supply the goods to. All these can be written on the order form. You can also put the date you want the supply to be made. All these are the things that can be put on the order form. The order form is sent by a buyer to the order, especially when you are satisfied by the response given to you through the quotation. So this is another purchase document. The next purchase document we have is the open and close indent. The open and close indent. The indent is a document that is prepared by a buyer, given to an agent to source for goods. This open and close indent is mostly used for international trade. It's also used for home trade too. Now, what is this indent used for? We have two types of indent. Like I said, the indent is used to do what? To request for goods through an agent. Now let's look at the two types of indents we have here, which are the open and the closed indent. An opened indent is an indent given to the agent, in which it gives the agent the free hand to obtain the goods from any source. Is given to the agent by the buyer. Is prepared by the buyer. Given to the agent, giving the agent the free hand to obtain the goods listed from any source. Now let's assume that I'm in Port Harcourt and I do get goods from Lagos or from any other place. And I have an agent that assists me in getting my goods. If I decide to give my agent an open indent, I'm simply telling my agent that, okay, all these goods I've listed for you, you can get them from any source, you can get them from any place, you can get my goods from any manufacturer. So it gives the agent the free hand to source for the goods from any source. But the closed indent is the opposite. The closed indent is used to restrict the agent to a particular manufacturer. Maybe, for example, you want to buy a particular product of, let's say, a refrigerator. There's a particular brand of refrigerator you like. So if you decide to give your agent a closed indent, you are only telling the agent that aside this particular brand of refrigerator, I don't want any other one. So it restricts the agent to a particular type of product, to a particular source, unlike the open indent. So this also is a purchase document prepared by a buyer and given to an agent to source for goods, the open and the closed indent. The next type of purchase document we look at is the purchase daybook. The purchase daybook can also be called the purchase journal. You can see it's like a book where you record day-to-day activities. But what is the purchase daybook used for? The purchase daybook is a book of original entry. It's a book of original entry. That's why we call it a journal. A journal is a book of original entry in which all transactions relating to only credit purchases, please you can underline the word credit purchases, are recorded. The purchase daybook is majorly used to record credit purchases. That means goods bought on credit from a seller. If, for example, you are a buyer and you have sourced for goods from some suppliers and you have not paid for the goods, you have not paid the supplier for the goods supplied to you, you should have a purchase daybook where you do what? Where you record all your credit purchases. Unlike the sales daybook that we looked at in as one of the sales documents. The opposite now is the purchase daybook. The sales daybook keeps record of all credit sales, while the purchase daybook keeps record of all credit purchases, not for cash purchases. It's used for credit purchases. So you have the same details. You have the date you bought the goods, the name of the supplier or the people you bought goods from, their names. You put everything down. Also the invoice number. Remember, the goods have been supplied to you. An invoice has been given. On every invoice, there is a number. So you put the invoice number, then the total amount on the invoice. That means the amount you are owing such a supplier. So that at the end of the month, you are able to know your total credit purchase. That means you're able to know the total amount of money you are owing suppliers that you need to pay. That is what the purchase daybook is used for, which we can also call the purchase journal. And remember, I said it's a book of original entry. That means a book where you keep record of day-to-day transactions. That's why we call it a daybook. The last purchase document we will look at is the receipt. The receipt is a document that is used by almost everybody. Every transaction that involves cash is meant to be accompanied with a receipt. So what's a receipt used for? A receipt can be in form of a piece of paper. It can also be an electronic document. The one mostly used nowadays is the electronic one, the one printed out through the cash register. So the receipt is a piece of paper or an electronic document that is used to confirm money received from a buyer by a seller. I take it again. A receipt, I said, this can be in the form of just a piece of paper, and it can also be printed out electronically. The major use of the receipt is to confirm receipt of money, is to confirm that money has been received by the seller from the buyer for goods bought or for services provided. So we can basically call a receipt an evidence for payment made. A receipt serves as evidence, or you can also say a proof that payment has been made. Is a proof, is an evidence that payment has been made for what has been bought. Now, let's assume that at first, when you as a buyer, you ordered for goods. Remember, you were given an invoice because the goods have been supplied to you. So all you need to do is, at the agreed time you have with the seller, you make payment. Then after the payment has been made, the receipt now confirms that you have paid the amount of such an invoice. So the cash receipt, all you have on the cash receipt now is just the date you made the payment, what the payment is meant for, the amount you paid, both in words and figures, then the mode of payment. Is it cash payment, or you pay through check, or now that you have other means of payment like the use of POS machine, you can, all these are also ticked on the receipt. Though not all receipt, but the current receipt you have now, you have columns for that. You have cash, like the one you are seeing on the screen. You have cash, check, others. So you tick the most appropriate one. You do pay in cash, or you paid with a check, or you paid through or with the POS machine. Then the total amount you paid. Then let's assume that you did not also pay the complete amount on the invoice. You can also have a column where you have balance due. Then the receipt is signed by the issuer of the receipts. So these are the various purchase documents we have for today's class. Let's take a quick recap of what we have learned in today's class. Remember, we started by looking at office documents as a topic in which we divided into two: sales documents and purchase documents. In today's class, we looked at purchase documents, and we defined purchase documents as those documents that are used to keep records of all purchase transactions. We looked at the various types of purchase documents. We looked at letter of inquiry that is prepared by a buyer to a seller to get information about product or services rendered. And I also made mention of this, that an answer to a letter of inquiry is a quotation. We also looked at the other form, which we can also call the purchase order. We define purchase order as a form that is filled to request or to order for goods from a service provider. You've sent a letter of inquiry, you've gotten a quotation in return, and you are satisfied with the quotation. The next thing you need to do is to place your order. So you place your order by filling the order form and sending to the service provider. We also looked at the open and closed indent that is used to source for goods through an agent. We said the open indent is used to give the agent the free hand to source for goods from any manufacturer or from any place. It gives your agent the free hand to source for what you need from any source, while the closed indent is used to restrict your agent to a particular source or to a particular manufacturer. We also looked at the purchase daybook, which we said is used to keep record of what? All credit purchases. Then lastly, we looked at the receipt that serves as evidence for payment made. It's a proof that you have paid the amount on the invoice. It's also a proof that you have paid for goods bought. We also looked at the various items that can be found on the receipts. So this is what we have for today's class on the topic purchase documents. So before we go, let's take questions from our exam guide. Let's take some questions from our exam guide. The first question says, which of the following is not a purchase document? Question should be, which of the following is not a purchase document? Which of the following is a purchase document? We have catalog, we have invoice, we have order, we have quotation, we have receipt. Which of the following is a purchase document? The answer is E. Receipt is a purchase document. Receipt is a purchase document. Let's take another question. It says, which of the following documents is used to answer a specific request made by a buyer? I made mention of this while explaining a particular purchase document. Which of the following is used to answer a specific request made by the buyer? Is it delivery note, or invoice, or letter of inquiry, or price list, or quotation? The answer is E, quotation. The request is placed using the letter of inquiry, and the answer is given using a quotation. So the answer is quotation, option E. The next question says, a document that serves as evidence of payment. A document that serves as evidence, or you can also say a proof of payment, is called dash. A, bank draft. B, bin card. C, check. D, pro forma invoice. E, receipt. So which of these documents serve as evidence or proof of payment? The answer is E, receipt. A receipt is a document that shows that you have paid for goods bought or for goods stated on the invoice. Option E gives us the answer. Let's take another question. It says the document issued when cash transaction is made as an evidence of payments is called dash. A document issued when cash transaction is made as an evidence of payments is almost the same with the last question we answered, but I just deliberately brought this one so that you'll be sure of what that document is used for. Is it a check or a credit note or debit note or draft or receipt? The answer is receipt. Option E, receipt. Now let me say this. Most students do mistake invoice for a receipt. Remember I said this. The invoice does not show evidence for payment. It's just a proof that you have received goods from the supplier or from a seller. But what shows that you have paid for the goods received is the receipt. Let's take some other questions. The next question says, the following are source documents except dash. The following are source documents except dash. We have looked at various source documents, both in the first part and the second part. So which of this is not a source document? Remember I also said another name for office documents is source documents, so don't be confused. Is it a cash book, or a credit note, or a debit note, or an invoice, or a statement of account? The answer is E. Statement of account is not a source document. All the other ones are referred to as source documents. The statement of account is a book of accounts. From the source document, you transfer the details on the source document to your statement or your book of accounts. So the answer is option E, statement of accounts.